Hello fellow cosmic beings, welcome to my video on Elarion. Elarion is a character in Fellowship, this much is already known, but if you're watching this video, you're watching for one of two reasons. Either you want to know more about Elarion and how he plays, or you're a keyboard warrior who's just waiting for me to make a single mistake so that you can tear me apart. Either way, welcome in. I'd be glad to show you around. First stop, who is Elarion? I'd love to answer this question, so first, let me break it down. Elarion is an ancient legend who channels the power of the cosmos through his abilities as an archer, weaving around the battlefield easily and marking his targets while the stars align in his favor through mythical effects. If you enjoy playing agile, fast-paced, and ranged characters, as well as dealing lots of priority damage and having very similar AoE and single target rotations, then you will probably enjoy playing Elarion. If you're looking for a sturdy and grounded character with more in-your-face gameplay and want to feel the weight of larger melee attacks, then you probably won't enjoy him. Willn't. That's a new word. To put it simply, Elarion spends focus to cast his bread and butter abilities while gaining it back over time, and also manages his powerful cooldowns which he depends on to barrage his enemies throughout the encounter. During all of his attacks he can move around, and during all of them except for one, he can roll around. To put it a little bit less simply, to put a little bit of stank on it, all of Elarion's attacks, again except for one, use focus, which is going to be that bar right there. That one. Yep, that's the one. You're looking at it. Yep. Ding ding ding. Focus comes back over time, depending on your haste stat, and can also be replenished with Focus Shot, which is the one attack that doesn't use any focus. You can also get focus back on a percent chance which is based on your spirit stat, but this is insignificant. Think of it like a tax return, assuming that you pay your taxes.
I don't care who the IRS sends, I am not paying taxes!
Next up is Celestial Shot, which spends some focus to deal more damage. There's an interaction here that I want to point out. Focus Shot has a chance to grant Celestial Impetus for 15 seconds, which empowers your Celestial Shot to apply a debuff called Lunar Light Mark to the target. Every time that you deal damage to an enemy, including AoE, this debuff has a 15% chance to have one stack explode and deal big damage to them. Critical hits will raise this chance up to 50%. Now this is a good damage increase that you'll want to capitalize on when you see it. The focus spenders, however, are 99% of what you'll be pressing. The important ones are High Wind Arrow, Starfall Volley, Heartseeker Barrage, and Multi-Shot. High Wind Arrow lets you shoot an arrow that ricochets off of several targets like Yondu, and it has 3 charges. The cooldown of these charges is also connected to your haste. Interesting, almost like that's going to be an important stat that you'll really want to focus on. Starfall Volley is a rain of arrows that lasts for 8 seconds and makes up a really good chunk of your AoE damage, which is on a 30-second cooldown. Multi-Shot is a skill that you only get a charge of when your High Wind Arrow hits 3 or more enemies, meaning it acts like the free cookie that a restaurant gives you when you spend $500 there. There's an exception here that we're going to cover later on, so remember this. Heartseeker Barrage is a strong single target ability which says, Fuck this dude in particular. When to use these abilities depends on a couple of things, namely what talents you have and the situation that you're in. But before we get too deep into that, let me cover the rest of what Elarion has up his star sleeves? Yeah. Moving around on every character is pretty simple. You pressed a button and he moved to forward. Bada bing bada boom. But on Elarion, we introduce something that changes the game fundamentally. Rolling while casting. Yeah, not only does this dude have a roll, but he can also roll while he's casting stuff. Focus Shot? Let me just roll over here. High Wind Arrow? Nah, I'd rather be over here. Heartseeker Barrage? Oh shit. Yeah, that's the one that he can't do. Sorry man. Once I'm done crying, sobbing, screaming, and throwing up over my parse, I'll realize that there's 3 charges to this ability, so I could just keep on rolling. This is super useful and it gets me out of a lot of trouble. It even got me into some. Now, Elarion's cooldowns are much easier to track than his charges. We have 4 major cooldowns that we'll want to keep track of. Lunar Light Mark, Sky Strider's Supremacy, Sky Strider's Grace, and Event Horizon. On pretty much all of these cooldowns, we'll want to be using them as soon as they're ready. as long as there is an enemy to deal damage to. Lunar Light Mark is a 30-second cooldown that puts 3 stacks of Lunar Light Mark, daring today aren't we, on your target, along with 4 other enemies around them. Using both this cooldown and your Celestial Impetus procs in conjunction will give you lots of free damage, so this is a really important cooldown. Sky Strider's Supremacy is a 45-second cooldown that gives you 4 seconds to use Empowered Multi-Shot. Empowered Multi-Shot allows you to use Multi-Shot without charges, makes it cost half focus, sends out a minimum of 3 arrows, meaning at least 3 arrows of damage, and deals magic damage instead of physical damage. That's how this button makes me feel, like a coughing baby. This button is alright for the effect it gives, but there's a talent that makes it operate much stronger. The Empowered Multi-Shot itself is also alright, but it's pretty lackluster. It gives you 3 arrows against 1 to 2 targets, giving it an edge over your Focused Shot and Celestial Shot without the procs. This effect gets much better with talents that we'll cover later on though. Sky Strider's Grace is a 3-minute cooldown that gives you 30% haste. By itself this might not seem like much, but this is by far the most important cooldown that you have at your disposal, since haste is your priority stat. Event Horizon is your spirit ability, which builds up with spirit that you get over time as you clear the dungeon instead of having its own cooldown timer. This ability lasts for 20 seconds, gives you 20% damage, minus 50% focus costs, and cooldown reduction equal to your haste. Also, during this buff, using High Wind Arrow reduces the cooldown of Heartseeker Barrage, and each hit from Heartseeker Barrage reduces the cooldown of Starfall Volley. Finally, as if this wasn't enough for an ultimate, you'll also get 30% haste, the same as all other spirit abilities. To cover your remaining buttons, you also have your Interrupt, Disrupting Shot, with a 20-second cooldown, and your defensive Ranger's Resilience with a 30-second cooldown. Finally, you have an AoE crowd control called Grappling Arrow, which pulls all enemies inside of the AoE to the center, which slows them down by 65% for 8 seconds. Now this is a really good ability for grouping enemies together, and it even interrupts enemies who are casting, so try to use this as much as possible for situations like group interrupts, and also getting everybody stacked like bowling pins for your group to steamroll through. While it's great to know what all these buttons do, it takes a certain type of nerd to know how to put them all together. Luckily, I looked through the notes of other people who have the time and talent to put this stuff together before I can, which means I can give you a general idea of what might be good to use at certain times. A note before discussing these rotations and skill priorities. Static rotations in this game feel like circle pegs in square holes.
The circle.
I think that goes in
The circle.
the square hole.
Most of the time there isn't going to be a set list of buttons to push in specific orders, and there definitely won't be many times where a list is 100% accurate to what you should be doing. I'll give you a general laundry list of priority abilities that I found, but ultimately there are too many variables that change the situation constantly, so be warned. So let me take you through the AoE priority, and we'll stop for notes whenever the single target rotation would be different. You'll want to start any pull with all of your major cooldowns in this order if they're up. 1. Sky Strider's Grace. 2. Event Horizon. 3. Sky Strider's Supremacy, which can be cast while you're channeling. And 4. Lunar Light Mark. Then, once you have all of your buffs online, your first attack will generally want to be Starfall Volley. If there are 5 or more of your targets after Volley, you'll want to prioritize using any empowered multi-shots as much as you can while Supremacy is still up. Your next ability after this is either going to be High Wind Arrow or Heartseeker Barrage. Keep note here that because of the charges on High Wind, once you've started the cooldown for a charge, you can move on to getting the rest of your cooldowns for your other abilities rolling. Now, your priority and rotation will look a little bit different depending on if you've built your talents for one of these 2 abilities. These are the endgame build-defining abilities, and from what I've seen, both builds are equally viable, but you typically only have the talents to build into High Wind Arrow until you reach around Adept rank. Obviously, damage is always going to be nice, but at the end of the day, if you feel better building into different talents, then you should do what you like the most. Back to our rotation. You'll want to use any stacks of multi-shot that you may have before using Celestial Impetus if you find yourself with the procs. Finally, you'll use the high priority ability that wasn't already on cooldown, and any empowered multi-shot stacks that you may have. Once you run out of focus, then you'll want to use Focused Shot to keep enough focus to use your damage cooldowns. Then, once you have all of your ability cooldowns rolling, you'll just want to focus, on keeping these cooldowns rolling and using them as soon as they come up. Elarion has a fairly simple stat priority. Haste is absolutely your most important stat to build, since this improves your attack speed, cast speed, cooldown speed, and focus generation. Also, haste increases the amount of hits when you're casting Heartseeker Barrage and Starfall Volley, and it provides bonuses to Event Horizon, which is the main reason that this is your best stat. Getting these extra abilities even more powerful is a huge boost. Second to your haste is Expertise, which generally increases damage effects that are triggered by you. This has a higher priority than the other stats because of the flat increased damage that you get. After this is Critical Strike, which increases the chance for critical damage, which is double. And finally, Spirit, which increases the rate of spirit gain for your spirit ability and also increases the chance of your abilities refunding the focus that they spend. Like I talked about before, refunding the focus is not really something that you want to look into. Because Spirit doesn't really give you much else, it's not your highest priority in any way, shape, or form. You don't really need the focus refunded when your haste is so high that you're getting it all back anyways. Critical Strike is also a low priority just due to circumstance. It's not important as the first two, but it's definitely not the lowest in importance. As a beginner on Elarion, your talents are probably going to want to focus on High Wind Arrow as your main damage, since it has the earliest, easy, good picks for your first rows. Covering talents at higher levels is basically deciding which of your two main damage abilities is going to be your largest chunk of damage, either Heartseeker Barrage or High Wind Arrow. Choosing between these builds is ultimately up to your preference. Or High Wind Arrow is going to have talents focusing mostly on High Wind and Multi-Shot, and it'll follow the same path as your low-level talent choices. Heartseeker tends to mix in some general talents which round out the damage profile between multiple abilities. To make it easy, let's dissect both of these individually. High Wind Arrow utilizes the following core talents. One is Final Crescendo, which gives every 4th High Wind cast double damage and up to 4 more ricochets. 2 is Lethal Shots, which gives your High Wind Arrow a 30% chance to get 100% crit chance. And 3 is Skyward Munitions, which gives Celestial Shot and Multi-Shot the ability to lower your Heartseeker and High Wind cooldowns by 1 second per cast. Favorable mention, you can drop some later talents that aren't any of these three to grab Resurgent Winds, which causes your Lunar Light mark to make your next High Wind Arrow instant cast, free, and deal 50% more damage against any targets with your Lunar Light mark on them. I would count this as a core ability, but not many other people do right now. It's not really in the meta, so it's ultimately up to you, but I really like this one. The rest of the talents that you pick are entirely up to you after you nab these 3 or 4. The Elarion Council has generally decided that the following talents are good to grab afterwards. 1 is Focused Expanse, which gives Focused Shot a 20% chance to grant Empowered Multi-Shot, and also increases all Empowered Multi-Shot damage by 25%. 2 is Fervent Supremacy, which reduces the cooldown of Skystrider Supremacy by 20 seconds, makes it grant 4 charges of Empowered Multi-Shot, and causes your Multi-Shot to deal 50% more damage. These 2 talents are insanely good for Multi-Shot and make it really worthwhile, like I was mentioning earlier. These 2 will give you a 75% damage increase on every single Empowered Multi-Shot that you do, and it makes Skystrider Supremacy a much better cooldown, so taking these 2 talents is kind of your higher priority. Number 3 is Skylit Grace, which gives Skystrider's Grace 100% increased cooldown when Starfall Volley is active. Number 4 is Lunar Fury, which makes Lunar Light Salvo deal 30% more damage. And finally, number 5 is Last Lights, which increases the critical strike chance of your attacks by 30% against enemies that are under 30% health. Heartseeker Barrage uses these core talents instead. 1 is Fusillade, which makes Heartseeker last longer and increases its critical chance by 20%. Number 2 is Piercing Seekers, which causes each of Heartseeker's arrows to ricochet 1 time for 70% damage. And number 3 is Impending Heartseeker, which resets and enhances your Heartseeker with 10% increased damage whenever you use Celestial Impetus. After these, the recommended talents are here. 1 is Skyward Munitions, again. 2 is Fervent Supremacy, again. Number 3 is Repeating Stars, which reduces Starfall Volley's cooldown by 0.3 seconds every time Multi-Shot deals damage. And number 4 is Last Lights, again. So, what do these builds actually look like gameplay-wise? Which one is better? We'll get to that first question soon, but the better build is going to be which one feels better for you. You won't feel strong or good at the game if you don't feel like your character is fun or engaging. So whichever build helps you feel more engaged with your character is going to be the better choice. How each build feels to play is At first, I said that these builds were very similar, and that Highwind Arrow really didn't feel much different from Heartseeker Barrage, but that's not true. Now that I've gone through and I've sat down and played each of these builds, albeit limited, with the core talents changed out, I feel like the difference is a lot more noticeable than when I was first just looking at it on paper. Highwind Arrow feels a lot similar in the rotation as you're going through. You're really prioritizing that Highwind Arrow, you're getting these multi-shot stacks that are doing a bunch of damage, and honestly that's kind of where it sits. Heartseeker Barrage is good for the cooldown reduction that it's giving you from your other passive talents, but since it's not the focus, it just feels like a really priority single target button that doesn't add much to your AoE rotation. The same goes for using your Celestial Impetus procs. It doesn't feel like it's giving you that much other than just the extra priority damage. The way that the Highwind Arrow build comes together is that you have two very distinct damage profiles. You have single target or priority attack, which is going to be your Celestial Impetus, your Heartseeker Barrage, your Focus Shot, and then you have your AoE damage profile, which is going to be from your Highwind Arrow, from your multi-shots. Unless they're enhanced, you can use those in single target too. And then your Starfall Volley. All of your buffs are going to combine together for both, but your main damage buttons are going to be these two distinct profiles. And this can be up to preference. If you like that, then great. If you don't like that, then maybe you'd want to look at the Barrage build. The Barrage playstyle is much more fluid and everything feels like it all culminates into the same damage profile. Your Heartseeker Barrage is doing multiple different hits to multiple different enemies as you're using it. Since it ricochets, it's lowering the cooldown. Overall, this build also feels much faster, since all of your cooldowns are all reducing themselves and each other so much faster, with Celestial Impetus procs completely negating the Barrage cooldown and making your next one deal even more damage, with the Starfall Volley reducing the cooldown of your other two abilities. Just with everything meshing together, this one feels much faster. You have to be much more on your toes. And you're using your entire kit rather than prioritizing some over the others based on the situation. So if you prefer that playstyle, Barrage is going to be perfect. Personally, I thought that I would be a Highwind Arrow enjoyer, because I thought that the distinct profiles would make me feel like I'm doing more particular damage better than others in certain scenarios. But I actually found that I enjoy Barrage so much more. Just having a completely full kit that is loaded for every scenario feels a lot more engaging for me. So that's what I ran. Now again, this isn't to say that the Highwind Arrow build doesn't want to use your Heartseeker Barrage and your Celestial Impetus. You do still want to use those. It's just you're going to have to pick a target and prioritize them rather than really have that be hitting the entire group. So you'll have to pay more attention to who you're hitting and why you're doing it, which you should be doing anyways. I feel like Elarion really, overall, is not that difficult to learn at a higher rank. Sure, I haven't played him at that higher rank, and I'm sure that he gets a lot faster later on, but really the gist of it is just keeping all of your cooldowns on rotation, making sure you're pressing all of your buttons, and that those cooldowns are all rolling, and then just staying on top of the different procs you get, whether that be Empowered Multi-Shot, Celestial Impetus, any of your cooldowns. Just making sure that everything is being used as soon as it comes up or as soon as possible shouldn't be that bad. He's a very fluid character. He's a fast character, but he also flows naturally very, very well. So as long as you keep on top of that flow and make sure that it keeps going, and as long as you're not dying, you're gonna find success on Elarion. So if you like how I've made this character sound, perfect. Go try him out. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. No, that is too beggy. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, I really appreciate it if you subscribe. I'm going to be doing one for every single character in Fellowship, and it's going to be really fun. Very excited. I have a few plans for the next one or two, and if you have one that you want me to do instead, you can tell me, and I will absolutely listen. And while you're down there, you can also leave a like on this video telling me that you enjoyed it. That helps YouTube put me on the map and tells them that you like my stuff. Also tells me that you like my stuff. And also, just to put it out there, I also stream on Twitch every Sunday. Hi, we have a lot of fun. I'm doing a Date Everything stream, probably as this video is coming out actually. But I do Fellowship streams, and I usually play the character that I'm about to do a guide for, just to, say that I actually play the character. So if you want to stop by and hang out, that'll be awesome too. But again, thank you guys for watching and laying your eyes on this masterpiece, and I'll see you next time. Or don't. I'm not your dad. Anyways, bye. Oh yeah, forgot I wanted to do this. For now, I'll stick him right here. Perfect. Surely people will be alright with what I pick and definitely won't fight me on my opinions.